나와 신나고 뻔게 또 신나 샤바와키 신나무 기그라니 짠 샤바기라니 짠무 기그라니
I have another guest. Mics are hot still. 3 seconds. Yep, you guessed it. They're all going to Clint's house because he's dating every last one of them. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. My name is Luke Rudowski here of thebestpoliticalshow.com, and we will be going live for the next 2 hours discussing all the latest and craziest news developing right now. As of course, there is never a shortage of things to talk about today, as the Democrats have their plan full of full takeover as Biden is on an extended vacation. Kamala Harris HQ is going after the beanie man, Tim Pool, as Donnie is calling for the freeing of the marijuana, if you know what I'm saying. Zuckerberg is apologizing as crime is skyrocketing in California, as there could be a potential clash between Venezuelan migrant gangs and Hell's Angels. Is that really happening? Or is that fake news? We're going to be talking about that, plus a lot more. So please share this broadcast with your friends and family members. It is more imperative than ever, as of course, we really appreciate your direct support. It really does mean a lot to us, especially when you're able to get this broadcast out to a lot of people. We've been doing incredibly well. If we do better, we're going to have even better guests here and a show that, of course, we promise to be the best politicalshow.com. You could also be a part of the show. You could actually call in and ask us whatever you want in a totally unfiltered way just by signing up to lukeunfiltered.com. When you do that, you get access to a Telegram channel. I am inside of that Telegram channel right now. And if you want to call in, just let me know that you do, and of course we will be going to you in about an hour and a half. We also have mysuperchat.com, the Streamlabs link down in the description, that of course we will be prioritizing over any and all super chats here. As of course, joining us for today's conversation is Nurse Aarin. Aarin, for the people who don't know you, who are you and how would you introduce yourself?
Thank you for having me. So I guess a lot of people probably recognize me as Nurse Aarin, but I worked in New York as a travel nurse at the height of the lockdown. Saw some bad things, and I went undercover, and I exposed it to the public, in hopes to save a lot of people's lives. NurseAarin.org is my website for those that may not know my story.
You are a very important whistleblower, and we are going to be going into your full story on the next platform, since this platform doesn't allow it. You were also censored a lot, and very interestingly, we were also in a music video, which we're going to be playing at the end of this broadcast, which I think is going to be fun. But thank you so much for making it. I know it was a bit of a hassle today, but we made it, and it's good to have you, so we appreciate you being here. We appreciate Clint. He's here instead of being with all the furries, too. I mean, that's a big ask. That was a hard decision for him.
It's a challenge every day, Luke. Every day I have to leave my house and all of my loved ones and come here. But I do it because I have a duty to you.
He has feathers on him sometimes too, and I'm like, why do you have feathers on you? He was like, that's just how furries roll.
We love each other, and I appreciate it if you don't judge. Anyways, at Liberty Lock Pod on X. If you want to support my work, subscribe there. I'll follow you back. Liberty Lockdown is the show. New episode dropping tomorrow. What else? I also do Tower Gang. Don't watch that. Steph's on the buttons. What's up, Steph?
Hey everybody, this is Steph. We are Change on the buttons, and of course, Clint has feathers because he's a Nephilim.
Do the Nephilim have feathers?
Yeah, I was like, I don't know.
Steph would know more than us. Steph?
I don't know, you guys. We got to figure it out. Why are we calling him a Nephilim if we don't know what they look like?
That's a great point. Thank you, Steph.
Steph, are you Nephilim? Where can people find you?
You can find my wings on the back of my back, and you can find me on X, flying. At Steph WRC.
All right, let's just get into it. There's so many different news stories to get into today, and I think the biggest one is the latest kind of PR propaganda put forward by the Democrats that are putting forward the policies of Kamala Harris that are perfectly encapsulated in this particular video. Are you guys ready? Are you guys ready for the major policy decisions from Kamala Harris to see what she's running on? Here it is.
I have a friend who had a Christmas party, Christmas Eve every year. and she asked me to make the greens for a party every year. And I am not lying to you that I would make so many greens that I'd need to wash them in the bathtub. I'm telling you the truth.
So how do you make your greens? Do you put turkey in them? Do you
Bacon.
Put nice. My grandma
I
used
do
to
bacon.
Put bacon. She's put
Garlic.
vinegar.
I put white vinegar.
Yes.
I do. So I start with, I slice up my garlic. Well, but no, first I chop up the bacon
fry it.
and get all that fat going. Then I
Oh boy, it goes on for another 30 seconds, absolutely just highlighting the absolute ridiculousness and the pandering that she's trying to, of course, play off to get the black vote. As, of course, a lot of people are splicing this scene up with the scene from Tropic Thunder, Robert Downey Jr. talking about his collard green experience, and it's almost just as legitimate as what Camala is actually talking about. This is not the first time that she said this. She keeps repeating this. Now she's getting into the nitty-gritty details of this, and to me, this is just not just top-notch cringe, but it kind of shows you how she's an empty vessel. She's not running on anything. She's not running on issues. She's not running on policies. She's running on, hey, look at me.
Vibes.
I'm a woman of color. We're going to have joy and vibes.
Look, I'm not
the gulag.
I'm not sure if it tells me she's qualified to be the president of the United States, but I think she's qualified to be in a kitchen. And that's something. No?
It sounded tasty. I was about to take some notes.
You know, she's probably memorizing every single ingredient because she probably never did this herself. She's probably like being questioned and quizzed about the ingredients in collard greens. As of course, this is something that she's been literally running on, literally talking about all the time, instead of the actual things that actually do affect us, the things that actually do matter for us. And it's a little ridiculous, right, Atlas? And to me, it's just another way of obfuscating what they are really about and what they really are going to be doing. As Elon Musk on Twitter retweeted Stephen Miller saying absolutely to him saying this is how the Democrats will win and take over. Quote, that they will eliminate the filibuster, pack SCOTUS, make D.C. a state, import a new electorate with full voting rights, declare dissent hate speech punishable with jail time, enforce a vast censorship and surveillance regime, make their power over you permanent. And with the way that things are going, we have been describing this for a very long time, particularly here on this YouTube channel, describing how this election, there's a lot at stake here. And if the Democrats win, I think what Stephen Miller is kind of describing is absolutely what is going to be happening here. This is the blueprint that many Western countries have followed. The United Kingdom followed a very similar kind of directive. So did New Zealand, so did Australia, and many other European countries that have absolutely been gutted and destroyed of their people and their culture. To me, this is the same thing that's going to be happening here in the United States. And enough of the collard green talks. Let's be honest about what kind of policies Kamala Harris is running on. These are it. This is what she's going to be doing because this is everything that they've been trying to do for an extremely long time. And I think now more than ever, they are kind of realizing that this possibility is very true. And it could come true in just a few days from now.
I think the reality is, too, that because of the shocking Trump victory in 2016, they now realize that they have a very limited amount of time to kind of close the door behind him. So they've done everything in their power to oust Trump from power. They've done everything to keep him from getting back into power. They tried to imprison the guy, take a shot at the guy. Look, I don't think that Kamala Harris is actually the threat here. What she is emblematic of to me is just a pure conduit for the regime, for moneyed interests. She actually doesn't have a tremendous amount of principles, and her principles will always be secondary to the powers that be and what they command of her. I don't view this as a race of Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris. I view it as dissident populism, which is left or right, versus the establishment, versus the machine, the regime, whatever you want to call it. And I know a lot of people, think that I'm crazy when I talk like this, but I've been studying this now for 4 years as I've become a full-time political commentator, and I'm very confident that's what we're up against.
Yeah, I've been looking into this for like 20 years, and it's like it's the regime versus everyone else, versus the RFK, versus the Tulsis, versus Vivek and Elon and everyone else kind of standing on the outside, not in the in club, not in the secret society club. How do you see it, Aarin? What's your perspective here? Because you've been in the kind of freedom community for a while as well. And it definitely does seem like there's a larger choice between the establishment puppet and someone promising to be completely different. Will they be different? Will it work?
No, I mean, I served in the military too, and we're supposedly fighting for freedom back then and even supposedly now. And even when I was overseas, like I knew at that point, I'm like, we're not fighting for freedom. This is bigger. Yep. I was in Iraq 2003 to 2004. We didn't find any,
weapons of mass
I
destruction.
can say that or
Yeah,
not.
you could say it. You're fine.
But I mean, and I was just young, and they were sending us on just random missions that to just make it look like we were doing something. And, even back then I remember telling my officer, I'm like, I'm not going on any more of these. But they have, they don't have our best interests in mind. And I think that, she wasn't even the popular vice president at the time, running. So all of a sudden now, what is their end goal here?
They didn't find WMDs, but they found and fomented ISIS. So we were left with that, as of course all the policy decisions that they were making radicalized a local population, kicked out the former members of the military there, and literally kind of aligned them with radical Islamists that later went on to be ISIS. And then they used that larger kind of battering ram that we helped finance and create through this larger ridiculous conflict to go after the Syrian government and try to overthrow their government. So it was an extremely mind-blowing kind of situation that Donald Trump still kind of speaks out against. We played a clip the last time we did this podcast of Donald Trump talking about the huge mistake that George W. Bush made. And to me, it wasn't a mistake. It was something that they deliberately carried out, that they knew what was going to happen, that worked in their favor, as of course they knew. We got to get rid of this guy in Syria. What better way to do it than, of course, mobilize, arm, and finance all the bad guys to do it through, of course, the larger kind of proxy war that we started through the Iraq invasion.
Like, I think that a lot of people don't realize that behind Camala and behind anyone that is in that regime literally it's a lot of evil. It's evil, and that's what we're up against. It's we the people versus that evil, and my motto is always united we stand against those we once trusted, because you cannot put your faith in any of these men or women, ultimately put your faith in God and do right by
I agree.
each other.
I think the only difference of opinion we have is that I never trusted them. But that's just because I'm a second-gen libertarian, so I'm very fortunate in that regard. But I agree with you. I think that it is. It's we the people versus the regime, and they are participating in a lot of evil. I just think that what is so challenging is that half or more of the voting population in this country believe in the machine still, and in fact they prefer it. And I think that's what's so fascinating. I was watching Real Time with Bill Maher on Friday night, and it was stunning to me that it's this panel, these three guys that are sitting up there, and they're all talking about how Kamala did such a good job in the CNN town hall because she didn't go into policy, she didn't engage with Trump and his attacks against her. And they thought that was good because it's not about, and then also they questioned the nature by which she took over the DNC nomination, and Maher says that was great actually. The DNC finally got their S together, and they didn't have a fight to see who was gonna replace Biden on the ticket, and this was all good to him because I guess he just wants them to look as good as possible to win no matter what, and he's not even remotely concerned about the policies. And it's just stunning how fearful they are of Trump in the White House, that they are willing, regardless of what her policies are, to support her blindly and to cheer as basically the democratic process is undermined because you don't even know what you're voting for. Like, this woman is not really expressing what she's actually proposing for this country, and they are good with that because it's not Donald Trump.
Yeah, that CNN town hall was a failure. Everyone was like, what did we watch here? Why is this fat white guy mansplaining next to Kamala Harris? Why is this heavily edited? Why is this not even live? How is this only 17 minutes and this is the only interview that they're giving here?
It's crazy.
And they're okay with it, and you have Bill Maher cheerleading this. Come on, Bill. I think he's smoking the tobacco wacky a little bit too much, and it lost a lot of brain cells personally. But that's just my take on it.
But it's just amazing to me because they're also fearful of Trump, right? At least their pretense is that because he was a threat to democracy. But what they are cheering on is basically the obliteration of the democratic process. You don't know what you're voting for, but you want everybody to vote for her. You don't even, I mean, let's be honest, they're also cheerleading the fact that she didn't even have to go through the primary process. She just replaced Biden in the palace coup. He's sitting there interviewing Nancy Pelosi and he's applauding her. He says, I'm not even going to ask you about, what you did to basically leverage Joe into getting him out of the race. And I'm like, why not? Why would you not? Like, are you interested in the truth at all? And it just seems quite obvious to me that no, he's not interested in the truth anymore.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting tweets this month was the Krasensteins being responded to by Tim, specifically right after Kamala Harris kind of took over the candidacy, took over the Democratic Party essentially, and then the Krasensteins were in full support and cheerleading her, and Tim's like, wait, she doesn't even have any policies. What are you rooting for? And the Krasensteins didn't have an answer here because we still don't have an answer. We still don't have a legitimate kind of explanation to what's going to be happening here. And I think what Stephen Miller just described that I was kind of telling everyone about is going to be the official plan. And I think a lot of these politicians are puppets. This is why Joe Biden is still on day 16 of a vacation. Yes, this is the latest images coming from the current commander-in-chief who's running the country, allegedly sitting on the beach like the old yeller old person that he is supposed to be. As of course, this would be okay since he's old. He's up there. This is what you're supposed to do in old age. Not when you're running a country. Or supposedly running a country, as of course he is a perfect puppet. And I think Kamala is going to be another puppet kind of president. I think she represents that. I think she exemplifies that. And I think she's saying the quiet part out loud by talking about her collard greens rather than her actual kind of policies that we still don't know exactly how they're going to be kind of implemented here.
Just a reminder to the audience, when you see Joe Biden sitting on the beach for 14 out of the past 18 days or whatever it's been, like, that's basically what he's been doing the entire presidency. Maybe he's not on a beach physically, but mentally he's been on a beach for 3 years now, and we all know it. And I just think that people need to realize you're not voting for the person who runs this country, okay? Like, even with Trump in power, he still didn't run the country. He tried to remove troops from Syria, and his generals lied to him. That's not allowed. But did anybody actually get punished for it? No, because they were doing the bidding of the regime. Trump was not the commander-in-chief. He doesn't actually get to make these calls. Neither does Joe Biden. Neither will Kamala Harris. Neither did Barack Obama. Neither did George Bush. They don't actually make these calls. In the case of George Bush, Dick Cheney was the one that was dictating foreign policy by and large. And so was his father, former CIA and former President George Herbert Walker Bush. It's just not like what you've been told about the system is not reality.
Yeah, I think Biden is peacefully protesting here. I think he's making a stand saying, you know what?
No, he's quiet quitting.
They took it away from me. I wanted to be the president once again. They didn't allow me to do it. They forced me out. You know what? I'm just going to go to the beach. I don't run things anyway. I don't make any policy decisions. I'm going to show America who's really in charge here by standing on the beach.
I don't think he knew he was president, to be honest with you.
Yes,
I honestly don't. I do think that everything that went down is definitely elder abuse. Everybody, especially his wife, to put somebody in that, who knows what they were doping him up with, for all of these.
Do you remember during the State of the Union when he was just jacked out of his mind? Yeah. And he's just like screaming. He's like, he was so intense.
But that's the length that they'll go.
Yep.
They'll find somebody to be a pawn. And I guess there's probably threats to that too.
Yeah.
Of course.
How do we know what they're being threatened with? And that they are literally that evil.
Oh, he was threatened with the 25th. I have no doubt. 25th Amendment.
He was probably threatened with a lot worse.
Yeah,
he was probably threatened with
at minimum.
At minimum. But they probably tied him down to a chair, put him in the basement, and said, "Joe, there's only one way of getting out here. We're going to post this tweet for you, and you're not going to do anything about it." And he's like, "Okay."
Very famously, Nancy Pelosi said, "We could do this the easy way or the hard way."
Oh yeah.
And Bill Maher, sitting 5 feet away from her, doesn't see fit to ask her, what is the hard way, Nancy?
Yeah.
What was the hard way that you were threatening the president of the United States with? Why, as the Speaker of the House, do you have the power to threaten the president of the United States? Does anybody ask that question? Is anybody remotely concerned with this? I am. I would like to understand it. Apparently, no one cares. As long as it's not Trump, I'm just my jaw was on the floor that he says, I'm not going to ask you about this. It's just amazing.
You would think that would be a legitimate question that we
Of
should
course.
be kind of asking here during all of this, as at RNC Research also says that the president of the United States spent 40.3% of his presidency on vacation.
Awesome.
And
Dude, great work if you can get
While
it.
our country crumbles.
Yes. While we're dealing with severe economic
Yeah.
issues, we're dealing with vast problems unfolding in the Middle East right now, inside of Europe right now. And there's no easy answers, especially to the larger economic problems that we're all dealing with. There's no easy solution here, as a lot of people now expect a major crash to happen in 2025. And it's pretty daunting looking at the numbers, looking at all the larger economic moves being made by California that's giving $150,000 in grant money to illegal immigrants to buy homes in California, that is literally selling out the general public. It's infuriating to understand and to see this country kind of being sold out to the highest bidder. As of course, the president, he's a puppet. He represents the corporate interest. This is only a charade. That charade, I think, for even Joe Biden is over. And I think if you're a part of the Democratic Party machine, you want this guy to go away. There's a reason he only spoke one day at the DNC.
Day one, too.
At around midnight,
Yeah.
and then literally flew and then went off to vacation. I think, maybe this is not even his own choice. Maybe there's powerful Democrats that are like, look, Joe, it's going to be inconvenient if you actually try to do something, or if you're around, you're going to make us look bad. So, shoot, get away.
I think this is important for people to recognize that day one was Hillary Clinton and the president of the United States. They don't do it like that. That was very, very symbolic. They were
at around midnight. This is the thing, because everyone's going to sleep, no one's paying attention, and then he literally flew away and wasn't even in the audience, wasn't even in the crowds.
Yeah, he started speaking 11-something Eastern. They wanted him to be as little impact as possible, and they wanted to give him as little room to screw things up as possible. But to have the president of the United States, who, by the way, was running for president just like a week prior, to give him the last speaking slot on a Monday, the first day of the DNC. You also have Hillary Clinton, the former candidate who lost to Trump. They were closing a chapter. I just want people to recognize the symbology of that. They were saying, you guys are the old guard. You're gone. We're going to have Barack and Michelle on day 3, and then we're going to have Kamala in there. This is now the party. Like, all the old guard is toast. But it really doesn't matter because it's all emblematic. By the way, think about how awesome that is that... Imagine that you could actually get paid $800,000 a year to only work 60% of the year. Like, Joe Biden works less than a school teacher, and he makes $800K.
Hey, Bidenomics, that's not a lot, all right? So we got to understand, it's not a lot of money, especially with all the inflation going around and all the people that, of course, are finding it more difficult to make ends meet. As, of course, your dollar isn't worth what it used to be. And that's the staggering thing.
Yeah.
Even growing up throughout my entire life, there was a big significant difference for what a dollar could get you. You could be a kid, and you could be at the corner store, at the bodega, and you could pick up a bunch of items for $1 before. You can't do that now. And that is just the realization that, of course, I'm personally having. Now imagine if you're older. Now imagine the larger trajectory here. Now imagine if you're predominantly in cash. What does that kind of largely symbolize for you as the value of your money, especially if you have it underneath the couch or in the walls or buried somewhere? You're making some wrong decisions. You're making some wrong moves here, especially with the way that the money is just being absolutely printed to oblivion, as we are $35 trillion in debt. And there's no going back from that. There's no putting the genie back in the bottle. There's no way to give the dollar more value than it has right now. Donald Trump, even if he becomes the next president of the United States, will deal with significant issues that will be a burden for him to try to rectify or fix, because there's no fixing this, as he's even looking at potentially implementing Bitcoin as some kind of reserve currency. And if you go in our kind of modern day society, you walk around and what's open, what's available, what kind of stores are kind of booming? The fake weed business. They're everywhere. CVS, all these other large corporations, they're even having a difficult time surviving out there, as now Donald Trump is talking about legalizing the marijuana. Yes, you heard that correctly. Donald Trump is talking about a lot of different issues. I think he's doing the opposite of what Camala is doing, and he's catching himself in some very kind of perplexing comments that even other right-wingers are like, what are you doing, dude? Just shut up. Stop doing this. As he's talking about IVF, reproductive rights, in a way that has angered a lot of the kind of more religious right-wing users, as now there also is a larger conversation that is starting some very interesting debates surrounding weed. As he declared on Truth Social, quote, "As everyone knows, I was and will again the most respected law and order president in the United States history. We will take our streets back by being tough and smart on violent crime." He, of course, has to preface this, and then he later comes out and talks about how, at the same time, someone, quote, should not be a criminal in Florida when this is legal in so many other states, specifically talking about marijuana. "We do not need to ruin lives and waste taxpayer dollars arresting adults with personal amounts of it on them, and no one should grieve a loved one because they died from fentanyl-laced marijuana." I don't think there's a lot of fentanyl-laced marijuana out there, but that's what the president is saying. He says we need to make America safe again, and this is a very interesting kind of policy shift, as the right-wingers aren't really, kind of known for doing this. To me, I've always been very critical of this entire war on drugs, because it's essentially a war on the intelligence agencies against everyone else, since they're the ones kind of importing all the drugs. They're the ones kind of selling it. They're the ones that are financing their black budgets through it. So for me, this could be Donald hanging out with RFK Jr. a little bit too much and saying, hey, these intel agencies are really making a racket off of this thing. This is one way to counteract them, by making it legal. What do you guys think? What's your take on this debate? Because some people are saying that this marijuana leads to degeneracy and the decay of society. We saw Milo Yiannopoulos, who's going to be on this show this Tuesday, make that kind of argument. Other people, like the Quartering, are saying, no, this is actually a good policy that is going to resonate with a lot of people and galvanize a lot of people in the middle to actually vote for him. What do you guys make of this conversation and debate? I'm going to ask the audience, too, on YouTube
right
specifically.
Off the bat, if you look at like countries in Europe, the drinking age is lower than it is in the US, and they don't really have the same issues that like our teens have here, where if you don't have it, or if you're not allowed to have it, you're going to find a way to get it, and you're going to maybe even hurt yourself doing so. Whereas like in France, for example, they don't look at alcohol the way that Americans do, at least in my experience. So I think that having it, having the choice, the freedom of choice to choose whether or not you want to engage in that substance, I think might actually deter like more issues with it.
Clint, you're in Florida. Are you going to vote yes or no on this Amendment 3?
I'm torn on the amendment. Martha Bueno explained what the issues are with it. I am personally in favor of legalization. I'm personally in favor of across-the-board drug legalization. As a libertarian, I think that you should not put non-violent people that are only damaging themselves in a cage. I think it's totally barbaric. That is not to say that I endorse or support people using illicit drugs. I think that they're oftentimes either life-ruining or life-ending, so I'm not recommending it, kind of the Ron Paul position on this. But I do understand people's concerns about people driving while high and things like that, not as if that doesn't happen when it's prohibited. That's laughably naive, and I don't know why people make that point. But there's a lot of the hard right-wingers that are like, this is destroying society, and I don't want to smell it on the streets when I walk past people and blah, blah, blah. Look, this is a very simple solution. First off, there shouldn't be so much public property, so we wouldn't have the tragedy of the commons issue that we're dealing with when it comes to the homeless or the drug addicts or any of that. So we should start by privatizing a whole bunch of the public property. But also, you can prohibit use of it in public. I think that's the reasonable compromise. I think that's fairly in alignment with libertarian philosophy, that a private business almost certainly would not allow for people to be shooting up heroin in their business. So let's make it prohibited in the public square as well. And I think that's really the answer here. What you're doing in the comfort of your own home, if you're not hurting another person, I see no reason for you to be threatened with being thrown in a cage.
Yeah, if it's a victimless crime, it should be treated like
Exactly.
not a crime because there's no victim here. But there is an issue when it comes to, of course, smelling it everywhere. If you travel to a lot of urban city environments, it's just kind of everywhere, which is obnoxious. Something I don't personally like. But if I had the choice between smelling that periodically or having the CIA import all the hard drugs and make all their money off of it, and of course help all the kind of, it's pretty much because of decriminalization why there's so much criminalization why there's so much harm associated with it. And if there was legalization, if there was a free market, if people had personal choice to do whatever they wanted with their own bodies, I think the situation would be a little bit different. You look at alcohol, you look at the amount of damage that it causes to society. If we really did the right thing for society, we would be banning forks because it makes people fat. And again, that's a ridiculous argument. It makes no sense at all. The government being in your life based on your own personal decisions that only affect you is absolutely idiotic, stupid, and something that needs to be pushed back on. And I agree with Donald Trump here, even though his base is not really happy about this.
But here's the reality, just real quick, just very short point. The majority in this country no longer want people thrown in cages for smoking weed. So regardless of how his base bitches and moans, like the nation has already shifted on this, and this is a winning position for him to hold. I don't know if he's holding it for principled reasons. I'd like to believe so, but regardless, it's a very popular position. It will bring some moderates over. And in my humble opinion, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are very concerned about the black vote. This is why she's pretending that she cooks collard greens, and he's challenging the fact that her mother is an Indian and her father was a Jamaican. And this is very popular amongst the black community because so many of them have been thrown in prison for nonviolent drug offenses. So I think that that's largely what this play is about. She's going to pretend that she's black and she's cooking collard greens, and he's going to say, I'm not going to put you guys in cages anymore. She was a DA in California that did so. That's the difference. Vote accordingly.
And now during the presidential debates that are coming up in just 9 days from now, we're going to have Roger Stone here with us watching it, just a heads up for everybody. But now during that debate, he could bring up her record as a prosecutor. He could bring up how she put innocent people in jail for marijuana use, which is ridiculous. There's a lot of hardened criminals out there, but it's also fair to say that there's a lot of police departments that have focused on punishing a lot of innocent people and have been very tough on a lot of people who are average Joes out there because of this particular issue, while ignoring actual legitimate crime that is severe, that is violent. Again, violence is overrunning a lot of major city areas. And to me, I think we should definitely prioritize issues. And for me, someone personally using a substance isn't an issue for me at all. I don't know what you think.
Well, from a medical standpoint, though, I do think that there's a place for it, especially with the abuse of all the psych drugs. And that's actually putting people in much worse places. So, I mean, I would agree with what President Trump said with that. I do think that we shouldn't withhold that. It is our right as a U.S. citizen, if we're going to go by the Constitution, what our country stands for. Yeah. And we have a medical card ability here in Florida, and it hasn't increased crimes. If anything, it has decreased because sometimes people turn towards alcohol or getting drugs off the street to cope with things, and there is a good place for THC to be used for good.
Yeah, in my opinion, the ATF should be a convenience store, not a government agency regulating all of those personal things. You actually have that in places like New Hampshire. You actually have an ATF store, which is pretty cool and pretty fun to be a part of. But there's a lot of people kind of, very passionate and emotional about this particular issue because there is, a fact here that this substance has been used for medical purposes and has helped a lot of people deal with significant issues that Big Pharma fails to help them at. Yeah. But the other factor is it also leads to a lot of kind of degeneracy. It also leads to a lot of psychosis. It also leads to a lot of kind of substance abuse that I think is serious. A lot of people say that this substance isn't addicting. I would disagree with that, with my understanding of it and the people that I saw kind of over abuse it all the time and become dependent on it. And especially when it comes to people's minds that are still developing, it does have a kind of negative effect on it. And we did speak about this kind of larger agenda recently recently that has been kind of very fascinating surrounding the kind of decline of nicotine use and the increased use of marijuana that a lot of people attribute to the kind of soy boying of our society. So there is that argument that you know, people who, of course, you know, are finding it more and more difficult to have a cigarette, while of course being offered free weed kind of everywhere. You go around all around here in Miami, all the businesses that are thriving are all the fake weed places.
Well, look, if you're interested in productivity, then you want to go back to the 80s where it's nicotine, a little bit of alcohol, and cocaine. I mean, that's the roaring 80s right there. If you want people to be productive, you put them on uppers, you don't put them on downers. And I think that's not the way you want to formulate society. You need to let people make their own choices. I think that it's a huge mistake to believe that this, first off, it doesn't actually really prevent people from getting their hands on it. So like,
people will get it regardless.
Exactly.
So, but then this belief that based off of what is or isn't legal will then dictate like the formulation of your society. Like really what dictates the formulation of your society is the liberties that the people have for themselves so that they can make their own personal decisions. And when you actually are given that capacity, you start to realize that you have personal responsibility that comes with these freedoms, and therefore you don't turn to the state for every possible need that you have. I think that a huge kind of knock-on consequence of the Prohibition era and it has been that more and more Americans look to the state for everything that ails, as opposed to looking inside or looking to their family unit or looking to their church or looking to their community to try and assist them. They look to the federal government for everything. That's not what America was supposed to be. That is a big part of the problem that we're dealing with right now, is that so many people think that this is what America is supposed to be. It's not. It's destroying us. And I think that is the knock-on effect of Prohibition that has basically pussified us.
Yeah, it's the opposite of being a critical thinker and making those decisions. Having that personal responsibility is super important, and with that you wield that power of having that choice and that freedom. Otherwise you're just lazy and gonna listen to what somebody else tells you to do, and you're not even like creating your own reality. You're just like living life by default. Well,
and let's keep in mind too, as we've had some of the harshest drug laws, simultaneously, we have become one of the most pilled out, medicated civilizations in human history, because Big Pharma, while they're prohibiting these street versions of these drugs, they have these highly, potent versions that are called medicine, that are prescribed like candy. And then because people think that they have an authority figure telling them that they ought to be doing this, they do it, to a very extreme degree. They've been led astray. And I think that really this is all a consequence of believing in this authority figure, as opposed to realizing you are the authority of your own life. You need to decide what you're going to put in your own body. You should not be putting, medications that some quack doctor prescribes to you because he's got some lobbyists in his lobby, trying to get him to push it. It has destroyed us, and people need to wake up. They really do.
Yeah, if you think the government has your best interest at heart, you're an idiot.
Yeah, what's wrong with you?
Or the pharmaceutical system, or Western,
or the food pyramid.
Healthcare.
Almost every single thing that the government kind of advises you on.
Just do the
when you kind
opposite.
of look at it, it doesn't
crazy.
add up.
Yeah.
How do people still buy that thesis? It's so obvious. I mean, after the past 4 years, if you still think that these scumbags have your best interest at heart, you're really not paying attention.
But there's a lot of people on autopilot that somehow still haven't even woke up from the last 4 years, that are saying, oh no, the system says this, the newspaper says this, the politician says this, we should believe in it. Because, on face value, you look at a lot of the stuff, especially when it came to the first original kind of criminalization of this substance, the history of it, the kind of propaganda behind it was absolutely based off false evidence. It was based off propaganda. It was based off a frickin' paper monopoly that didn't want to be challenged by hemp. So if you look at that kind of larger history here, we don't have a free market. We have a market ran amok where certain kind of predatory industries and sociopaths are able to prey off of you and to hurt you, while others that represent a solution are heavily criminalized and thrown behind bars. So I absolutely agree with Donald Trump. I know there's some complications with Amendment 3. I think one of the super chatters kind of explained it well, but we're just talking about this issue on a superficial basis based off legalization and not legalization outside of Florida here, because it's far more complicated, and the language in the ballot is not as clear as we're making it in this particular discussion. Steph, read from the bottom to the top the super chats in Telegram, please.
We have Michael Thompson saying, I'm all for legalization, just not Florida's Amendment 3. It will constitutionally codify a state-sanctioned monopoly. Read the ballot language. No on number 3.
Just a quick tangent for Michael John. Was it Thompson?
Yes.
Okay, when I was in middle school, when I would get written up when I was like playing too rough, and I would get written up by the yard dogs, the yard duty, I would always give that name.
Yard dogs? Is this a furry thing?
No, that's just what we that's what we called them. They were just like the old ladies that did it for a volunteer, but they would write us up if we got in trouble. I would always use that as my alias because we didn't have any ID. I was a kid, so I would just lie to them and give them a fake name so I didn't get detention. That was the name I gave. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, well, we have Shadav the Ved Mac saying legalization with regulations of that controlled substance. Same laws for providing it to minors as alcohol, designated areas it's allowed to be used, removing restrictions for medical applications.
Okay.
Keep going, Steph.
We also have Red Viking saying, are you the best political show or we are change?
We trans-identify as whatever we want, when we want. We're show fluid, and you better respect our pronouns or you will go to jail. As, of course, I think the whole kind of law and order issue is something of a significant issue, this kind of political cycle. And I think this is why Donald Trump had to preface, hey, I'm still going to be tough on crime. As, of course, there's a lot of serious conversations to be had about crime, specifically in major Democratic areas. As today, we got the news report that a 49ers first-round pick was just shot during a robbery attempt in San Francisco. Of course, this story made national headlines. Everyone's talking about it as the lawlessness there has severely increased to a point where I think there is no going back from it. This, as of course, there's also some troubling reports from Colorado. We're going to get into that in just a little bit here. But this story, specifically coming out of San Francisco, does highlight what I think to be a lot of kind of authorities and police departments and politicians that have kind of lost perspective about what is actually important, and they're hyper focusing on all these other kind of larger issues that don't really matter, as real criminals are literally let loose into the streets and allowed to do whatever they want. As political speech, oh yeah, they're watching that carefully. The FBI, oh, you're an activist that aligns with the right. Oh, they're going to be watching you. You're a parent at a teacher school board conference. We're going to be watching you. But these guys, these gangs, these criminals, they get a stamp of approval. That's crazy, and that's absolutely ridiculous in my opinion. What do you guys think? You're a commie, Fornian, Clint.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the big problem in California is that, well, they have very harsh crimes against drug use. When I was growing up, they have now shifted to kind of allowing for drug use in public to run rampant, while they also stopped enforcing property rights and property crimes when it comes to shoplifting and things like that. Also violent crimes sometimes. I mean, there's reports, I don't know if this has been confirmed yet, so take it with a grain of salt, but there was reports that the young, it's a minor, by the way, it was like a 16, 17-year-old, he's a norteño, which is a gang member in NorCal, who shot this San Francisco first-round draft pick. He had apparently been arrested for a gun charge 3 days prior and released, and then went on the street and then tried to rob this dude for his Rolex and ended up in a tussle, ended up not just shooting the football player but also himself. I mean, it's all indicative of a country in decline. But it's really just indicative of I look at California like its own country. I don't look at it as part of America anymore. And I think eventually people will start to perceive things this way too. New York is also not part of this country. Like, they are their own nations. They have their own horrific policies, and they will suffer the consequences of those policies. But I think it's a huge mistake. Like, you have to have property rights upheld. You have to have violent crimes, prohibited and enforced, lest your civilization start to decline, and that's what we're witnessing in these places.
Yeah, I think this happens to everyday citizens all the time, and I think the only reason we're kind of hearing about it is because it happened to a celebrity. It happened to a sports ball star that, of course, is galvanizing all the kind of news coverage here, as a lot of football fans are going to be pissed. Like, holy cow, like, we can't even have our players in the cities that they're playing for because they're going to get robbed and targeted, as there's a new kind of class of criminals out there that are paying attention to a lot of these kind of sports stars and celebrities and seeing, when are they on vacation? When are they bragging about flying on a private jet? Where do they live? Oh, and a lot of the celebrities that do brag are being targeted more and more by these kind of sophisticated organizations and criminals that are harvesting all of their data from social media, getting information about them through the public commons, and then utilizing the public information of people bragging about how great they're doing by individuals who, of course, are sort of Robin Hooding, not really,
right?
But
in their worldview, but in the prosecutor's worldview of like equity and social justice,
exactly,
they genuinely perceive things this way. They go, well, the wealthy, sometimes you're going to get robbed by the poor, but the poor, this is the cries of the unheard, the impoverished. They're downtrodden. Like, it's a really sick perspective. You cannot, excuse people for committing violent acts with weapons and things just because they're poor. That's not that's insane.
Yeah.
But this is actually a really concerning thing. Like, just think about it from this perspective. This kid is an elite athlete, probably 21 years old, just graduated college, just got drafted in the first round to the San Francisco 49ers, gonna play his first game 10 days after this event. And now his season is almost certainly over. And his life was, probably inches from dying. He was shot in the chest. I saw where it happened. Had that been over a little bit, he's gone. I mean, this is really dangerous. But this is what Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris wrought upon that great state.
Yeah, they're reporting that he's in serious but stable condition. So his career is probably over. I mean, people don't understand.
It looked like it went through his lung potentially. If it did, I don't know how he's going to recover.
That's devastating.
I have a story to go on this, and I've actually not shared this yet, but it's kind of promoting having a concealed carry and knowing how to use a weapon in need. But this was in 2022. I had furniture being delivered by Ashley Furniture, and 3 of the guys were delivering my couches, and I'm in my office, and there's no way out. And I do conceal carry everywhere I go.
Gangster.
That's the way to do it.
But what if I didn't? And there was a 6'5" guy, and then there was another one standing at the steps. And this was like after they had already put my furniture in, they should have been leaving. And he came closer and closer. It was cornering me into my office. I'm like, get out.
Did you draw?
You need to leave.
Yeah.
You need to leave. And he wouldn't. So the other guy was a lookout. And then the driver, I looked out my window. He's out there ready to go. And yes, I drew on him.
Wow.
And I think that I would have definitely been either raped or murdered or both had I not been concealing. So when I contacted Ashley Furniture, they wiped their hands of it, said we contract out. The contractors had no idea who they were. They're undocumented.
Whoa. So they're hiring undocumented to
yeah. So I ended up calling 911 right after that, locked the door. And you know what the police officers told me? Well, why don't you just call 911? I was like, and what? You guys took 35 minutes to get here.
So you can call as I'm.
So I was,
pulling myself off the floor. That's insane.
But that is a good reason that, people need to know how to, especially women, need to be comfortable with shooting.
It's crazy that
and handling
gun rights aren't a bigger deal amongst women, honestly.
Yeah.
And it should be a bigger conversation this election cycle. We should be talking about it more. We should be, of course, holding politicians' feet to the fire, as there's still some kind of questions about who's going to implement what kind of policies. One side's talking about banning it. The other side doesn't have the best track record here, but they did appoint a bunch of Supreme Court justices that I think propelled our rights to self-defense more than any other kind of Supreme Court ever. So we do have to be kind of very grateful for that, as of course being able to conceal carry has expanded throughout all of the United States, and it's a beautiful thing to see. It's awesome because it kind of equalizes a lot of situations that women are kind of put in, and it allows them to be able to protect themselves, their life, and their loved ones. And I think we need to understand it from that larger perspective. And as you mentioned, any woman in my life, I make sure, even my mom, I was like, you're going to tactical training. I'm taking you, and we're going to make sure that you understand the kind of ramifications, the situations here, your weaknesses here. And a lot of people don't kind of realize that it's not like a Marvel movie out there. Yeah. The girl bosses can't take down 15 dudes with super kicks and be successful here all the time. Dudes can't do that either, especially if the numbers are not on your side here.
Well, and if you look at that story on Aurora, I mean, it's getting really dangerous. Now, this is not a universal or a national issue. Like there are many states and many areas and many towns that are still very safe. But if you live in one of these more progressive leading areas where the police have been told to essentially turn a blind eye,
down.
yeah, then you have no choice but to begin to take it into your own hands to defend yourself, and not just yourself, but your loved ones, your family, and your community for that matter. So I think we're going to see this is the beginning of that trend. It's going to get much more significant.
Yeah. And, you know, this is why the story from Colorado is so important right now. As, of course, Sam Tripoli said, is this how civil war starts? Well, if it's true, then maybe. But we don't know if it's true, as an average normal guy at SP500_trades, random account with this username, tweeted out a video that I think a lot of people, he sort of looks trustworthy here. I don't know what do you guys think? But this random guy posted a video saying, "Can confirm Hell's Angels headed to Aurora, Colorado." Now,
Liar.
Is this true? Is
No.
this not? There's a lot of fake news. This could just be a random guy on a random road who saw a bunch of bikers and decided to, of course, take a clip of it.
You could just pull that video from YouTube. You could just literally search. I bet if you were to search right now, you know, Hell's Angels on the highway, you could find videos of people posting when they see Hell's Angels on the highway, and then they just post that and say they're on their way to Aurora. It's like, no, they're not.
This could be fake news.
What is Hell's Angels?
Could be not. They're
They're like
motorcycle.
They're like a biker gang.
Yeah, one of the most famous ones.
How do you know it's them?
I think
They wear it on their jackets.
They have like a brand.
Oh.
Yeah, and you can't really see the brand in the video. You just see a bunch of
Yeah.
bikers moving past, which again could just be a bunch of bikers moving past or going somewhere. As of course, a lot of people are responding to this story of migrant gangs taking over a Colorado apartment complex, which a lot of people there are saying it's not an isolated occurrence. And there's a crazy video of a man with a long rifle walking around some of these buildings, and family-friendly show here for the first hour, so we will not be showing you that particular video. But this is, you know, a story that I think is somewhat significant here, that a lot of people in the Democratic Party machine don't want you really talking about here. As you go to Venezuela for a very interesting reason. Ever since we kind of opened our borders, their crime rate has gone down dramatically.
Stunning.
It's almost as if there's kind of a correlation. It's like there's a correlation here. It's like, you know, all the bad people, you know, just automatically maybe just took advantage of a situation where they were able to walk in without being challenged or questioned or identified through the United States, given free airplane tickets, given free hotel stays, given prepaid debit cards and cell phones, and told, hey, welcome home. This is your new form of residence here that naturally a lot of people would kind of organize, coalesce behind. And when they have very difficult ways of making ends meet, where they have only Tyson jobs available for them with less than minimum wage pay, why not take advantage of a situation where the Democrats are absolutely weak on crime, are excusing it to run your operation in order to take full advantage of it and to, of course, enrich yourself.
Brief rant on this too. The Aurora, Colorado Twitter account, or I don't know if it was the like county police or whatever. They basically said, you know, this issue is overblown, you know, but we're proactively addressing it, blah, blah, blah. But then what they really did is they threw the apartment owner under the bus. They said that this is an out-of-state owner and that they haven't been dealing with it. It's like, hey, you commies, the property rights are defended by the state in America. Like, that's not, unless you want us to go full vigilante justice, which I'm personally fine with, but you guys would throw me in jail if I were to do that. So I think that it's kind of your job. So if you have a Venezuelan gang, Tren de Agua, who's taking over this apartment complex because your police have not been addressing it, they're literally collecting the rents from the people. That's fraud. It's also, threatening. I'm sure they had to threaten because there's a property manager. Even if you're an out-of-state apartment owner, you're still going to have a property manager on site who's supposed to be collecting those rents. Obviously, that guy has been scared to death, so he's not going to try and fight this gang. What are you supposed to do? Obviously, if you're out-of-state or in-state, you're still going to have to rely on the police to deal with this. This is a friggin' armed gang with military-grade weaponry. Well, how are you going to deal with that as just an individual citizen, whether you're in state or not? So I just thought it was totally reprehensible of them to throw them under the bus. But the lesson in that is that they do not respect landlords. Like, this is your local government who's telling you, oh, these are out-of-state owners. How evil of them. Like, that is an investment into your area that benefits your community because it drives up the prices of housing because you have investors from out of state that are interested in buying and investing in your area. If you don't respect those people, they will stop investing in your area, and they ought to. And then the prices will come plummeting down. Your tax base will go down, and then you'll go insolvent because you're already in debt. And you deserve every ounce of it because you're not actually upholding your end of this alleged social contract, which I never signed on to. And I'm done. I'm good.
As they're allowing squatters to literally take over your private property and not doing anything about it in many of these kind of jurisdictions as well. So you add that in California, they just took another step saying, we'll give you $150,000 if you're an illegal here. I made the point the last show we did that if you're one of these criminal organizations, you bring on Juan from the border, you're like, hey, take advantage of this. We're going to finance this through our kind of criminal enterprise that we're running here and take advantage of this situation that the taxpayer is going to be paying for. You look at a lot of these kind of situations, they call and they breed a lot of this criminality because naturally people organize based on their kind of ethnicity. So if you're, Venezuelan or from El Salvador or from whatever country, you're going to have a kind of relationship with each other. You have all these criminal enterprises, you're going to have protection rackets that are going to naturally prop up saying, I will protect you against these other gangs that are propped up here and allowed through the state to operate without even being kind of criminalized. And if they do get criminalized, they get thrown out into the streets the next day and they don't care because they literally aren't even citizens of this particular country. So this is the kind of larger situation. Yeah. It's all upside.
You could literally just come here illegally and then take over. I mean, they're collecting the rents on an entire apartment complex. We're talking about probably tens of thousands of dollars per month.
But how is this even happening? Like, I don't
Because the police have stood down. They haven't done their jobs. Like, it's
That's what I was going to say.
If you're a police officer, right, there's someone, smoking something personally, that's an easy guy to get. These Venezuelan guys with long rifles, I'm not doing that.
Right. I mean, you probably need SWAT for that.
Yeah, but can I draw and be like, get out of my house, or what's gonna happen?
Well, that's the problem, is that they would almost certainly arrest the actual tenants if they were to refuse. And
it depends on what jurisdiction you're in and the district attorney in that jurisdiction. And if he was supported by a billionaire that finances a lot of these people that, of course, particularly punish people for defending themselves or standing up for themselves, like we saw in New York City, where a lot of these vigilantes are literally being thrown in jail for standing up for themselves and the safety of their local citizenry. So that's the
Daniel
situation.
Penny? Daniel
Penny is one of them. That's going through it right now.
That's why we're here, though. Order followers, right? So we just need a couple of those officers to say, no, I'm not going to follow those bad orders. We need to do what's right. Like, they work for us.
Yeah, it's our responsibility to engage them to be doing their jobs.
Yeah, I don't think they work for us, and I think that's the problem.
There's some of them in there, just like in the healthcare industry. Like, there's some of us that said, absolutely not. We're not doing that. And then there's the others that, so at the end of the day, we just need some brave people to just say, absolutely not.
But in every industry, as you were pointing out, not just healthcare, but also police and and government for that matter. I mean, this is my hope that Donald Trump and the people that he's surrounding himself with are those heroic figures that are willing to actually risk something to retrieve what's left of the Bill of Rights. It's a naive belief, and I admit that wholeheartedly, or openly rather. But it's still like, that's what we need. We need heroic people to rise up.
Like, there's a guy that earlier that said, like, is this the start of a civil war? No, we've been in it. Like, this started a long time ago. This probably started like right around 9/11. I think that was when they really started planning out what they're doing to us right now. And just way too many people were either blind to it or they just wanted to have that comfort, and just kind of let it be. But at the end of the day, I think that this is our fight, not our children's fight. So it's just going to take a lot more of us to stand up and say no, or just be bold and brave. At the end of the day, that's the only way we're going to save our country. It's not going to just be with Trump or anyone in office. It's all of us.
Exactly.
The harsh reality is that for this to happen, it's going to be more and more obvious, because it's going to take more and more obvious interactions or situations for people to wake up and be brave and do something to wake them up from what's happening.
My hope is that because there's so many millions of people that are just afraid to speak up and tell the truth, that because they start to see more and more people doing it, it makes it easier for them to do it. And I think that there is a tipping point. This actually happens in revolutions. My preference and my hope is that this will be a peaceful one. But like what you need is you have to reach a tipping point where it just goes like, like half of the people I know are also now speaking up and they're risking their livelihood. Like there's strength in numbers, there's cover in numbers. Like it makes it so that you're not the hammer that will be nailed down because you're not the first one. But we need those first ones. And I feel like that's what we're part of, is like the first wave of people that are just saying like, I will risk everything. Like I was running a very successful company. I'm probably totally unemployable in the corporate world anymore. But I'm okay with that because this is the path that I've chosen because it's the right one to be on, and we just need more and more people to do so. And I think once we hit that threshold, then it'll tip.
It's a smart move to make too, because there's not a big future in the corporate world with the way things are going financially. Right. And if you're kind of smart and looking at the situation, you're like, oh, there's a lot of alternatives here. Yeah. I'd rather that than be a slave and a cog in the machine of the corporatocracy that, of course, is becoming more and more ruthless against the local populations. We still have a lot of things to discuss. Aaron, we still have to talk about your story. Tony Robbins had some very interesting comments about Mr. Fauci. We're going to be playing that and talking about more health-related topics on the next portion of this broadcast that is available on thebestpoliticalshow.com. Before moving over and transitioning away from this kind of censorious platform, we're going to be taking callers 2 and 30 minutes. You want to call in, let me know on Telegram. But before going to this next platform and leaving this one, Aaron, where can people find out more information about you?
So if you go to nurseaaron.org, that is my website. Instagram, Aaron_BSN2. My first one was deplatformed. And then Twitter, of course, it's Aaron_BSN.
Yeah, there's a lot of deplatforming.
Yeah.
And you dealt with a lot of it.
Yeah.
So.
If you haven't lost a few accounts, you're not even attempting to tell the truth.
Are you even a fighter?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the good news is that it seems over the past few years that has diminished. Thank goodness. Let's hope it doesn't start up again. I'm actually surprised. I thought we would all be in serious jeopardy leading into November. It hasn't happened yet, but you never know. It's still a chance.
I think they're going to take down all of the internet and all the free platforms on social media in between now and November 5th. And I'll make my argument why. I think what happened in Brazil was a blueprint that they're testing out right now. It's the beta test.
I agree.
That they're going to be implementing.
We should talk about
that's why there's interesting conversations with Mark Zuckerberg, with Telegram also being arrested. Clint, where can people find out more information about you?
At Liberty Lock Pod on X. Liberty Lockdown is the show on YouTube and everywhere else. Just subscribe to that. While you're doing that, please search for The Best Political Show. Subscribe to that so you can find the audio version. So if you ever miss an episode of the video version, you can still listen to it. Steph,
We Are Change here, pushing the buttons. You can find me on X at StephWRC or on Instagram at StephWeAreChange.
All right, we're still looking for a caller. That caller could be you. Sign up to lookunfiltered.com. Let us know you want to call in, and we will be going to you in about 30 minutes from now, as we have a very spicy video to start off this freedom section of the conversation on thebestpoliticalshow.com. Go there right now